Austria emerged from World War I as a severely weakened and humiliated nation that had lost an empire built over hundreds of years. The Treaty of Saint-Germain confirmed the new order and set Austria on a path of misery, instability, and widespread poverty. This was fertile ground for radicalization that shaped the fate of an entire nation. 4 years after World War I, Austria was on the brink of financial collapse. Hyperinflation was destroying the currency, and the savings of ordinary Austrians were becoming worthless. Austria eventually had to strike a series of deals to get out of the crisis. It recognized the new Czechoslovak state and relinquished its territorial claims. Austria also pledged not to pursue an Anschluss with Germany for the next 20 years. In return, Czechoslovakia loaned Austria hundreds of millions of kronen, and Britain, France, and Italy later did the same. The situation was so severe that Austria even allowed the League of Nations to oversee its finances until 1926. Although international loans and League of Nations supervision helped Austria recover from the worst phase of the crisis, political polarization only deepened. Tension finally exploded on the 15th of July 1927 when a court acquitted right-wing militants accused of killing 2 Social Democratic Schutzbund members. Outraged workers poured into the streets of Vienna, and the protests spiraled into chaos as the Palace of Justice was set on fire. When the police opened fire on the crowd, nearly 90 people were killed and hundreds were injured. Austria never really had a chance to enjoy a short period of prosperity and stability. The situation worsened again when the Great Depression hit the country hard. In May 1931, the largest bank in Austria, Kreditanstalt, collapsed, sending shockwaves through the entire economy. Confidence evaporated almost overnight. Savings were threatened, credit dried up, and businesses began to fail. Unemployment surged, and for many families, the crisis meant one thing: hunger and hopelessness. As the economic disaster deepened, politics became even more radical and more violent. More and more Austrians stopped looking for solutions in parliament and started looking for strongmen instead. In May 1932, Engelbert Dollfuss became Chancellor and moved the party in Austria towards dictatorship and centralization. In March 1933, after all 3 presidents of the National Council resigned during a procedural dispute, Dollfuss seized the moment to prevent Parliament from reconvening and began ruling by emergency decree, tightening control over the press, banning political opponents, and dismantling what remained of democratic oversight. By early 1934, the country was a powder keg. The government moved to disarm the socialist Schutzbund through a series of raids and weapons searches across the country, and it didn't come without a response. On the morning of the 12th of February 1934, police and Heimwehr forces raided a Social Democratic Party building in Linz to search for hidden weapons. The local Schutzbund commander ordered his men to resist, and within hours, fighting had spread to Vienna and other industrial areas. A general strike was called, but it collapsed within hours. Years of unemployment and poverty had demoralized the workforce, and the uprising was badly outnumbered and poorly coordinated. In Vienna, some of the fiercest battles were fought around the massive municipal housing estates built in the 1920s, most famously Karl Marx Hof, where the army even used artillery to break the defenders' positions. Martial law followed, and within 4 days, by 15th February, the government and its right-wing allies had crushed the revolt. The Social Democratic Party and trade unions were outlawed, key leaders fled or were imprisoned, and several captured figures were executed, marking the decisive end of Austria's multi-party democracy and clearing the path for an authoritarian corporate one-party state later that year. While the Social Democrats were being crushed, and it seemed that Engelbert Dollfuss had secured his rule, an even more dangerous enemy was gaining strength and confidence. The Austrian Nazi Party, illegal in Austria but backed, encouraged, and in important ways guided from Germany, decided that after the crushing of the left in February 1934 and the creation of Dollfuss's authoritarian Ständestaat, the moment had come to strike. On July 25, 1934, about 150 Nazi plotters, some disguised as Austrian soldiers and police, stormed the Federal Chancellery in Vienna while another group seized the state radio station. Their plan was not just military, but psychological. The radio broadcast falsely claimed that Dollfuss had resigned and that power had passed to the pro-Nazi politician Anton Rintelen in the hope that Nazi supporters across Austria would rise before the government could react. Inside the Chancellery, Dollfuss tried to escape through a door leading to the state archives, but found it locked. Turning back toward a hidden staircase, he was shot at close range. The attackers refused him medical assistance, and he slowly bled to death as the putsch began to unravel. Despite Dollfuss's death, the army, police, and most state institutions remained loyal, and Austria still had one powerful protector, Benito Mussolini. Dollfuss had tied his regime closely to fascist Italy, and Mussolini still wanted Austria to remain independent as a buffer between Italy and Nazi Germany. When news of the assassination reached Rome, Mussolini reacted immediately, ordering Italian forces to the Austro-Italian frontier and signaling that any German move through the Brenner Pass could trigger a wider conflict. Faced with that risk, Hitler backed away and publicly abandoned his Austrian followers. Within days, the revolt was crushed and several leading participants were executed. After Dollfuss was assassinated, his close ally Kurt Schuschnigg, formerly Minister of Justice and Education, became the new Chancellor. Schuschnigg understood how fragile Austria had become, divided at home and increasingly isolated abroad. He kept the authoritarian corporate state in place and tried to hold the country together by suppressing both the Social Democrats and the illegal Austrian Nazi movement. But Hitler's pressure only grew. By 1936, with Italy drifting closer to Germany and Austria losing its last reliable protector, Schuschnigg was pushed into the July Agreement. Berlin formally recognized Austria's sovereignty, but in return, Vienna granted amnesties and allowed pro-Nazi figures back into political life, strengthening Nazi influence from within. Over the next 2 years, Germany tightened the screws. In February 1938, at Berchtesgaden, Hitler forced further concessions, most importantly the inclusion of Arthur Seyss-Inquart in a key security role. Desperate to save independence, Schuschnigg announced a last-minute plebiscite for March 13, 1938, hoping to rally Austrians behind sovereignty. Hitler answered with an ultimatum: cancel the vote, resign, and hand power to Seyss-Inquart. On March 11th, Schuschnigg stepped down. On March 12th, German troops crossed the border, and by March 13, 1938, Austria was formally absorbed into the German Reich. The Anschluss marked the end of Austria's statehood until the end of the Second World War. The war ultimately brought immense destruction to the country and its people. After 1945, Austria was divided into occupation zones, each controlled by a different Allied power. When Austria regained its full independence in 1955, it did not come without conditions. Austria was not allowed to unite with Germany, and it committed to permanent neutrality, a status it maintains to this day, and one reason it never joined NATO.